Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about the novel The Perfect Murder written by H.R.F. Keating. This presentation will include the summary of every chapter, about the book, about the author, about the themes, and the general observation regarding the novels. So let's begin. Unlike what is apparent from the name and the name of the protagonist of the novel, which is very Indian, the whole imagery of the novel is very Indian. It's a shock that the novel is written by an English person. Okay, so H.R.F. Keating was born in Sussex, England, and he had served the army and he had worked in BBC and as a crime fiction reviewer in the Times magazine. Okay, uh, his first novel was the novel we are going to review, The Perfect Murder, which was written in 1964. But this was not the only novel featuring the protagonist, Mr. Ghote. Okay, there are total of 26 novels. So there's a whole series of novels based on this Inspector Ghote. Okay, it is a shock that Keating wrote 9 novels, and only after that he visited Bombay. Before that, he did not visit Bombay at all. And when you read the novel, you will understand that he has a very keen sense of observation. So in his interviews, and he has mentioned this thing that he had had detailed discussions with people who had Britishers who had returned from Bombay, or his Indian friends. Okay, he watched a lot of documentaries and read a lot of Indian literature. So his research was thorough, and that is the proof of how important research can be, because he's it seems like it is the whole novel is written by an Indian. Okay, even better observation than an Indian himself. Okay, so it comes as a real shock that he had written 9 novels before visiting Bombay in actuality. Now he himself admits to this, that he had written these 9 novels as a fluke, and the first novel, which is The Perfect Murder, won the Crime Writers Association Gold Dagger Award, which is a very prestigious award in terms of crime fiction. Okay, and also the Edgar Allan Poe Special Award. And he says that this was a total fluke, because after he visited Bombay, which was much later, 10 years later, in 1974, when Air India sent him a ticket to visit Bombay and stay in Bombay for 3 weeks. It was only after that he realized that his observations, although very vivid, were not perfect. Okay, and he stopped writing altogether after that. He resumed his writing much later. All right, much later, and his intended last novel featuring Inspector Ghote was supposed to be Breaking and Entering in 2000, but he later made a comeback. Inspector Ghote made a comeback in another novel which was written in 2008, called Inspector Ghote's First Case. And lastly, very next year in 2009, A Small Case for Inspector Ghote. And in 2011, H.R.F. Keating passed away. So these are the other important novels written by Keating. Of course, this is not a whole list of his works, but these are the important other novels written by Keating. So we have The Hard Detective, which he wrote under the pseudonym Evelyn Harvey, and it was a very famous novel which featured uh, a female lead, that is Detective Harriet Martins. Okay, then he wrote a science fiction novel called A Long Walk to Wimbledon, Rich Detective, Bad Detective, Jack the Lady Killer, which is a verse novel. So these were the important other novels by H.R.F. Keating. Now, before we begin the novel, the chapters, there is a very important preface that is given as a foreword in the novel. The preface is written by Alexander McCall Smith. Now, he was another famous crime fiction writer and also a reviewer. Okay, and he has written a long preface to the novel. The basic 3 things that he has done in this preface is defend Keating for not visiting Bombay, because critics would review it as something very negative, right? Writing about a place and writing about a character where the entire setting is a foreign land. If you have not visited that place, if you have not actually experienced it, it comes across as a very negative thing when it comes to critics. Okay, so he defends Keating for not visiting Bombay by saying that not there's not a place in the novel where you'll feel that it is not written by an Indian writer. Okay, So he gives instances, and he says that um, it shouldn't matter to the critics that he has not actually visited Bombay, because he's done his part of research by talking to people, by spending uh, enough time to understand the culture, the language, uh, the idiosyncrasies of the people who are living in India, especially Bombay. Okay, so he has done his part of the research, and it shouldn't come across as a negative thing, and we shouldn't judge him by that. Okay, another thing that he defends is that some critics would also say that because he has not visited Bombay, he uses international tone in his novel. Okay, so the writing is British in many manners. Okay, the he has not studied the characters so well, so the linguistic element is not perfect. Okay, so Smith says that this is a deliberate attempt by Keating. He has used the international tone so that it appeals to a larger audience and not just India, because he wanted other people to also understand um the culture of India, and know more about the people there. That was his idea. And it actually happened that because of this novel, it became so famous, it won so many awards, that many people actually read about Inspector Ghote. And there are a lot of remakes to this novel also. BBC has also made a movie based on this novel. Again in 2011 there was supposed to be a series that was going to be featured, and it's still in under construction. Okay, so we might expect something once again. So that was his defense. All right. Also in the preface you will find a lot about Inspector Ghote's character. uh, Smith has talked about our expectations. Like generally the readers would expect that the protagonist is somebody very heroic, and he will be able to solve things very much like Sherlock Holmes, that he would be able to, all the solutions will be at the tip of his fingers, and he would be a genius and a good looking person, and everything in his life would be perfect, or even if it's not perfect, he'll make it perfect. But our protagonist, Inspector Ghote, is nothing like that. He's an everyman, he's a common man. Okay, he has common man issues. He's fed up of a lot of things, of corruption, of his work life balance, and everything. So it frustrates him, but he cannot express his frustration. Okay, he has to take notice of a lot of things in his surrounding. Okay, and that's why we shouldn't expect that he's some kind of a heroic, masculine and handsome and a genius or something like that. Let's not expect that. He's an everyman. So this is what McCall Smith wants to deliver to the audience before they read this novel. He doesn't give any spoiler or anything to the novel, of course, but he says that your expectations should be something like this. The novel begins with the clamor of newspaper boys shouting the title of the book, that is the name of the case, that is Perfect Murder. So the newspaper boys are shouting the perfect murder, police baffled. Okay, making fun of the police department and the investigation. And this is read by Inspector Ghote, and he's already frustrated. In the very beginning of the novel, he's frustrated because not even before the case is assigned to him, people are making judgments. Okay, the media is doing circus regarding this, and which is kind of what we know happens in India regarding the media. Okay, there's a lot of spice that is attached to every news, and the news is sensationalized. So the novel begins with that sensation. Okay, and then we see that Lala Arun Verde, uh, we get this information that Lala Arun has called the Bombay police, and he has reported the perfect murder of his secretary, his employee, at his house. And Inspector Ghote is assigned the case by the DSP. All right. Um, Lala Verde's house has been described in the first chapter. He's a man who's very wealthy. He's an industrialist. He has a lot of other little companies in uh, in business, in finance, in real estate. Okay, so he's a very rich person, and accordingly his house is also uh, very big. It's very fancy. All right. This first chapter is basically about Lala Verde's personality. It is his exposition, and from the very beginning, we get a feel the tone of the novel is going to be very frustrating, because Lala Verde is so such an irritating personality that we feel the frustration of Inspector Ghote. Okay, this person is rude. He's rude to the servants. He's rude and condescending to the police officer who's come to solve the case that he himself has reported. Okay, he's very condescending towards Inspector Ghote. He's mean. He's very proud of his wealth. Okay, of his power and authority. He continues talking. He cuts Inspector Ghote in between and starts talking rubbish. Okay, he's a very big, he has a very big ego. He's ignorant about a lot of things. Okay, because he is a very rich person, and he must have a lot of experience in business, but when it comes to other things, he's ignorant. Okay, and he does not even want to acknowledge that he might not know about something. He feels that he knows everything. Okay, he has a chameleon like personality, changes his colors every second. Sometimes he's vulnerable and he'll say that, Inspector, I'm just a poor man and I have a poor household and I don't know what to do. People take advantage of me, and my rivals in the industries have definitely, they are the ones who are behind this perfect murder. Okay, so you have to go and catch them. That is why you are assigned this case. I know that who has done it. They are my rivals. Go and question them. Okay, and he fails to answer him any question that is posed by Inspector Ghote. Fails to answer anything. Okay, either he intimidates him by his power and his voice, saying that you are asking me a question. How dare you ask me any question? Okay, so either he intimidates or he just says that, I'm a poor person. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, I don't know. From where did you get this information? So he just brushes off all the questions. All right. Then we come to know the first irony behind the name of the novel, The Perfect Murder. Why am I saying the first irony? Because there are more ironies. Okay. So the first irony behind the name is that it's not the perfect murder as in the perfectly committed crime, but the name is there because the victim's name is Mr. Perfect. He is a Parsi man and his name is Mr. Perfect. Okay, so that is the first irony, and we understand that, okay, this is what we have to expect from the novel. All right. um, Lala Verde is, grieving this crime, this attack, this killing of Mr. Perfect, because of two main reasons. What are the two reasons? One, that his business will be affected because this Parsi secretary was the genius behind his numbers in the business. Okay, so he himself, Lala Verde, himself does not do any work. It was the Parsi secretary who took care of all the deals and took care of all the accounts and everything. Okay, so he fears that his business will be affected, and he tells that this is the reason that his rivals decided to kill Mr. Perfect, because they thought that without him his business will not run. So at times this Lala Verde is vulnerable, that my business will be affected and I'll become a poor man, and how will my sons, do what they want? Okay, how will they become spoiled? How would they just stop becoming spoiled brats suddenly? Okay, so I'm very, sad because of it. And the next moment he'll be fully egotistical, and he'll say that these rivals think that without Mr. Parsi, without Mr. Perfect, this Parsi secretary, I'm not going to do anything. My business will be affected. No, they're wrong. I will show them, how business is done. So he shows many colors together. And the second reason that he's sad is because of his ego, that he feels that his name in the industry will be tarnished because somebody had dared attack somebody in his own house. Somebody infiltrated his fortress. That is what he calls his house. Infiltrated his fortress and dared to come and strike uh, Mr. Perfect there. So that is why he is sad. Okay, he has no real remorse for his secretary. Okay, no real remorse. Also, we come to know about this book called Gross's Criminal Investigation, which is like a Bible to Inspector Ghote. So whenever Inspector Ghote is stuck anywhere or he's too frustrated, he tries to think about his copy of Gross's Criminal Investigation, where he has learned everything about investigations, be it tact, how to, tactfully talk to the suspects, be it analyzing the area of the attack. Okay, all the things he has learned from this particular book. So he keeps thinking about this book when he's frustrated. All right, he is offered liquor by Lala Verde and he denies drinking it because he's on duty, and we learn that Inspector Ghote is a man who is true to his duty, true to his badge, okay, and he respects his job very much. Then towards the end of the chapter, we hear that we see that these two people hear a clamor from outside the house. Okay, from the back of the house, from the back of the mansion, there is a huge clamor of people talking, shouting. Okay, and Lala Verde, although he hears it, he tends to ignore it, and Inspector Ghote is curious about it. So after it becomes unbearable, Lala Verde asks Inspector to stay where he is, and he says that I'll solve the problem and I'll come. Okay, that is where the chapter ends. One important thing to note in this chapter is the silly rhymes that is used by Lala Verde. He uses these silly rhymes like secretary, marquetry, locking, shocking, which is an Indian way of speaking. Okay, it is a linguistic idiosyncrasy of Indian people, right? We use a lot of silly rhymes, like even calling somebody or saying police kya karegi, something like that. Okay, so he uses a lot of silly rhymes. So you will notice that in this novel these silly rhymes are also there. Then there is present continuous tense everywhere. Okay, ing form of verbs used everywhere. Okay, so these are the linguistic elements to notice. Use of the word only. Okay, I was to there only. Okay, I was there only, you don't know only. So only is something that we Indians use a lot, right? So that is the end of chapter 1. Let's go to chapter 2. The second chapter is a very small chapter. um, in the last chapter, towards the end, we see Lala Verde rushes off to deal with the clamor that was outside the house. Of course, Inspector Ghote follows him, and he sees that Lala goes uh, to this gate, okay, rusty iron gate, which is very giant, and this gate separates Lala Verde's mansion to from the servants' quarter, okay, and a huge crowd of all the servants of the household are beyond the locked iron gate. Okay, so they are just beyond the locked iron gate, and they are not able to come inside, and that's why they are shouting, asking Lala Verde to open the gates. All right, and Lala Verde rebukes them, saying that, "What do you want to come? Go and stay, go and sleep, and do your work. Don't disturb me here." And Inspector Ghote listens to everything. Okay, and Lala Verde watches Inspector Ghote enter this area, and he immediately takes him uh, to look at Mr. Perfect, who is lying on the uh, inside the mansion. Okay, so Inspector Ghote says that I want to look at the murder site. So take me to the site of the murder. And he goes there and he finds that there is no dead body on the murder site, and he's very angry. Inspector Ghote is very angry, and he says that why, how dare you move the body without my knowledge? Okay, because there are evidences that are to be noted down, and you have moved the body from the murder site. That is not right. Okay, he remembers Gross's criminal investigation, and he says that this is something like a crime according to this book. Okay, the body shouldn't be moved. And Lala Verde in the end of this chapter says that uh, the body, why do you keep calling it a body, because there has not been any murder. Okay, so that is the second irony of the name, the perfect murder, that it is not a murder. He says that my secretary was only attacked. Okay, he was not murdered here. There's no dead body. Uh, he's lying there in other room upstairs. Okay, and he's being taken care of by people. Okay, there, that is where the chapter ends. So the chapter is basically about the servants' quarter, okay, and how they were locked. And when Inspector Ghote goes um with Lala Verde, he inspects the house. First of all, the structure of the house is explained. That is actually like a fortress, because there is no window on the outside of the semicircular house. All the windows are facing into the courtyard, from where there is only one gate, okay, to enter. So that one gate is very heavy, and there's no sign of any struggle on the door, any kind of marks or some kind of a drilling that somebody would have entered. Okay, and there were no pipelines on the roof attached from outside that somebody would climb the pipelines and enter into the courtyard directly. So there is no chance of, and all the windows that are already there, and the doors have imported American steel grills that were not there in India at that time. So very strong security has been laid out by Lala Verde in his house. Okay, so of course you tend to understand this, and this we'll see in the next chapter, that it is impossible for someone to come outside into this house and attack somebody. Okay, that is where this chapter ends, and of course it ends at a very shocking note that there has not been any murder, and Inspector Ghote has been under the impression that somebody has been killed in this house. Just like the mercury in a thermometer, we feel the anger and frustration of Inspector Ghote rising with every chapter because of the silly things that keep happening, people not following logic or protocol in any manner. Okay, so we see that he is really angry upon Lala Verde because of the fact that he's not been clear from the very start. Okay, uh, he is called this a murder repeatedly. It is him who has called the police station and told that it was a murder, and then the media people, they started calling it a murder, and it is not even a murder. Okay, so Lala has a silly reason for it, and he says that the people who came in to murder Mr. Perfect intended him to be dead. Okay, but it is his good luck that he did not die, so it is supposed to be a murder. It is a perfect murder. All right, so Inspector is really angry upon hearing all these things, and by now this phrase, the perfect murder, has stuck to his tongue, and he keeps on repeating it and himself, and he's very angry because of it. Okay, so now immediately Inspector Ghote says that take me to the victim, to Mr. Perfect, and Lala does so, and he immediately takes him upstairs to Mr. Perfect's room and drops him at the door and rushes off. And in the manner in which he was rushing off, Inspector Ghote suspected that something is wrong, and he quietly followed Lala Verde and saw him that he is taking out from his dhoti a rusty looking iron key and rushing towards the servants' quarters. So the inspector smiled, and he understood that all this while, when the gate was locked and Lala Verde was shouting that, I don't know who has locked the gate or something, he was the one who had actually locked it. So there was a reason that he locked that door, and Inspector Ghote understood that there's something fishy going on in this house. Okay, so he again comes back to Mr. Perfect's room, and he sees that this room has bare minimum furniture. It is not a place where you can keep a patient who is so seriously ill comfortable. Okay, there is no furniture in the room. There's just one ceiling fan, okay, which moves in a really slow speed, making awful sounds. Okay, there is one cot where Mr. Perfect is lying, and nothing else in the room. That's it. Okay, and there are two doctors who are looking on to him. One is Dr. Das, who is the family doctor of Lala Verde. He has been summoned by Lala Verde. Okay, and he's a frog. He has a frog kind of face and sound. Okay, that is what is written about him. And there is another police surgeon who's like a witness to the police investigation, who uh, checks the patient and everything, but he's of no use. Inspector Ghote knows this person, this police surgeon, and he knows that this person is the most indecisive person in the world. Okay, so he will never say yes and mean yes. Immediately he'll say no. So nothing is, it's never black or white for him, and that is very frustrating, especially when you're dealing with a criminal investigation, right? So whatever Dr. Das says, this police surgeon says yes, and then he immediately, if he changes his opinion, he said yes, yes, you're right again. Okay, so yeah. Then after looking at all this, and he watches Mr. Perfect lying there unconscious, and he has a very lean body, uh, and he's wearing an achkan, okay, which is kind of an elite wearing, okay, Gujarati elite wear, okay. So he's wearing that, and his skull is damaged. The back of his skull is damaged, and that's why he is unconscious. And the inspector tries to overhear the conversation, and then he talks to Dr. Das about when and whether he's going to gain consciousness, and Dr. Das is unclear about it. He says that he may gain it, right now in some time, and but there's a good chance that it might take a while. So then no clear answer is received by Inspector Ghote. So after that, he goes to the site of the attack, okay, and investigates it. He hands over a golf club to the constable and asks him to take the fingerprints or whatever is there on it. He finds a clot of blood on the floor, and that is what he finds there, nothing too substantial. Okay, and then he comes and he watches Lala Verde in his courtyard eating betel leaves and just sleeping there with his servants pressing his feet, and uh, he's not at all bothered about anything. Okay, and Inspector Ghote is just so angry, but he keeps remembering the grossest criminal investigation, that if he, intimidates or shouts or uh, says something bad to Lala Verde, he will stop cooperating altogether and the case will not be solved. So he keeps quiet. And then he starts to question the servants one by one. Okay, and he asks them basic questions like, where were you yesterday evening? When did you last see Mr. Perfect? And the servants are so intimidated already that they feel that the blame will be deliberately put upon them. That is the problem with India, because they have such an experience of law and order in our country, the poor class, the people of the poor class, that they fear the policing system rather than trusting it. Okay, and they think if they are being questioned about something, that means the blame will be put on them. So they straight away deny that they had ever seen Mr. Perfect, which is problematic, and the case is not going any forward. And ultimately, after questioning all the servants, there is only one young boy whose name is Satyamurthy, who comes and tells that he saw Mr. Perfect in the evening go somewhere and then come back. All right, and then he again saw him around 12 o'clock, at around midnight. Uh, he was in the room and he Mr. Perfect came to that room and he asked Satyamurthy to stay in that room and not come out. So that's why he couldn't see what happened after it. Okay, so that is the last he saw Mr. Perfect. Okay, this was some direction that Inspector Ghote got, and he was relieved, and he was going to question him more when Constable Sen comes and he says that the DSP Samant uh, is asking to, is calling Inspector Ghote to his cabin urgently and to have a talk with him. And Inspector Ghote is like, at this time, it's night, and why would he call me in the office right now? And the constable tells him, sir, it's already morning. So we see that Inspector Ghote is so involved in his work that he forgets that the whole night is over. He has spent the whole night at Lala Verde's house questioning and investigating the case, and it has been morning already. He has not gotten any sleep and immediately has to dress up and go to the office to talk to DSP Samant. Inspector Ghote immediately rushes off to meet DSP Samant. There he meets Axel Swenson, who is waiting at the door of the cabin of DSP, and this is Axel Swenson. So an exposition of Axel Swenson is done in this chapter. He's a Swedish man who works with UNESCO, and he has come to India to study the policing methods closely. So he has been assigned a role with Inspector Ghote, and Inspector Ghote has to treat him as a top priority and lead him everywhere he wants to go and solve cases and investigate the cases with him. So he is always there to, on his shoulders, to bother him, to annoy him with his ridiculous questions. And to begin with, the immediate concern that this man Axel Swenson has is the nature of religions in India, where we practically bribe the gods uh, to solve, to give us solutions. Okay, we bribe them with coconuts and milk and whatnot. Okay, and even money. So he says that if there is bribing system even in the religion, so how can it be taken out from the nature of the people? Okay, so there will be corruption as a natural thing existing in India. So that is what his observation is, and he says that what we should do, inspector, we should change the scriptures. And the inspector tries to explain to him that this is not what one can do. One cannot change the scriptures. That is ridiculous. But he does not understand it. He's adamant on making the inspector believe that he can change the scriptures. Okay. Anyway, we move on to DSP's cabin, where DSP Samant is introduced to us. He's a very strict looking person, and he is very, very demeaning towards Inspector Ghote, and he says that there is an urgent case that he has to solve, and he goes at length about the case, about the urgency of the case and how important it is, and how it is not to be disclosed to anybody because it has taken place at the Ministry of Police Affairs. So it is top priority. Once again, second top priority. We already know that two top priorities are there. So one is the perfect case, and then Axel Swenson, and now the third top priority is there. And Inspector Ghote looks at the DSP and he says that, how can I solve three things together? And he gives him a very cruel look and says that, and makes him look at his files, The files are labeled top priority, most urgent, ultimately most urgent. Okay, so all those tags are given to the different files there, and he says that you're not the only police officer who has to make a decision that which case is more urgent. You have to solve this. And then we come to know that the matter is about the theft of 1 rupee at the minister's office, which is very ridiculous. All right, and the inspector is, already he has not he did not sleep the last night, and he's not going anywhere with a perfect case, and now he's burdened with this theft of 1 rupee, and he's very angry, but he cannot show it to his superior, of course. So he says that I'll solve the matter, and he's accompanied by Axel Swenson to the Ministry of Police Affairs, and it is shown that this place is spick and span, and it's beautiful, and it's classily decorated, and we are shown how a fancy place in Bombay looks like. So Lala Verde's home is the first place that we, first elite home that we take a look at, and now secondly this Ministry of Home Affairs. So we are introduced to a peon named Felix Souza and Mr. Jain, who is the personal assistant to the minister. Okay, the minister is nowhere to be seen. The minister has to go attend some kind of meeting. So the matter is taken into hands by Mr. Jain, his personal assistant, who is very clear, and he gives clear information, and inspector is really happy that this is how interrogation should be done, and the people should answer in such logical manner. Okay, but still the matter is very difficult to be solved, because Jain says that this is the whole case. Mr. Jain says that the minister had, like every day, had gone and changed a rupee 10 note into 10 singles. Okay, so 10 1 rupee notes, and when he came back from his meeting to check the drawer in which he had kept the 10 1 rupee notes, he found that one note was missing, and Mr. Jain was outside the minister's cabin the entire time, and nobody had entered the cabin. So how has that theft taken place? Okay, and when the inspector asks him that, who all, if you would have missed somebody who entered the house, he said that there are 3 fingerprints on the drawer, one of the minister, second of Felix Souza, the peon, because the minister had asked him to open the drawer, after which he counted the money. Okay, and of Mr. Jain himself, because the minister had asked him to close the drawer after he counted the money. So these are the 3 fingerprints to be found, and there is nobody else who has entered the house. So how has this theft taken place? So this is again a very big mystery. Okay, one important thing to note in this chapter is the Bombay imagery that has been painted very vividly from the windows of the ministry office. Inspector Ghote looks at the slum roofs, okay, and at a distance the sea and the traffic noise. So that is a very Bombay-esque image that has been drawn in this chapter. After the conversation with Mr. Jain, Inspector Ghote questions Felix Souza. Now, as we had seen with the servants in Lala Verde's house, Felix Souza is also a man of poor class, and he is mortified when he is questioned, because he thinks that the entire blame will be put on him. So even before he answers, even before he's questioned properly, he starts crying and beating his chest to prove that he is not guilty. Okay, and he's not answering any question, and Inspector Ghote is very, very frustrated at this point. Okay, to top it all, Axel Swenson is thoroughly into Indian mysticism, and he properly believes that if nobody entered the cabin, if there was no outlet for the cabin, that means it is the work of some kind of mystic power. Okay, somebody has done some kind of black magic or something to steal this money, because he has gotten too deep into Indian mysticism and all these things, these superstitious beliefs. Okay, they all together search the cabin. Inspector Ghote looks for any kind of secret inlet inside the walls of the cabin, if somebody would have done that, but there is no escape at all. Okay, and then finally inspector looks at the big windows in the house, which are of course sealed. Okay, but if there is any outlet there, it is that window. Okay, so somebody could have, but the building is a high rise building, and there is no chance that somebody from outside could just immediately open the window and enter inside. So inspector has made some kind of an observation, and we'll see that observation in the next chapter. So Inspector Gote says that the window cleaners must have done it. So what he says is that from the roof of the building, the ropes would have been attached to a platform, and like the window cleaners are supposed to clean the windows, and one of them would have opened the window and stolen the 1 rupee note and would have escaped from the window. Okay, so that is the observation, and it makes sense to everybody. Axel Swenson is ashamed of his mystic beliefs for a while. Okay, and everybody is relieved because because Mr. Jain also says that it was Monday, and on Monday the window cleaners clean the window, so it makes sense. So the inspector is guardedly happy at this point, and he's uh, somewhat relieved that at least one of the top priorities are solved. And he says that I'll make a list, send me a list of all the window cleaners, and I'll interrogate them, and I'll find the culprit here. Okay, and he leaves the ministry. Okay, so after that he immediately goes to Lala Verde's house. Just remember that he has not gone to his home yet. Okay, so he is still doing his job. He has not gotten any sleep yet. So he goes to Lala Verde's house to check on Mr. Perfect, whether he has gained consciousness or not. This constant fear of Mr. Perfect dying on his sick bed, uh, you know, haunts Inspector Ghote the entire time. For the next 10 chapters, this haunting feeling is always there. He's always scared when he's not at Lala Verde's house that something would happen to Mr. Perfect, or somebody would come and kill him. Okay, so he immediately, whenever he gets a chance, he either telephones the house or visits it to check on Mr. Perfect. Okay, now while he's there, he goes and he talks to Axel Swenson has accompanied him, so he introduces Lala Verde to Axel Swenson, and Lala Verde pays no heed to this person, and he is just sleeping there and nodding his head and behaving in a very condescending manner. Okay, and ultimately Inspector Gote loses his patience, and he says that Lala, you have to answer my questions, otherwise, I'll have to intervene and use my ways to, get out the answers. And Lala is furious at this, and he threatens Inspector Ghote and tells him that if you question me or if you use that tone with me, you're going to lose your job. Okay, and he says, anyway, I don't know anything about it. You can go ask my elder son, Dilip Verde. Okay, so he sends a servant to, direct them towards Dilip's room. Okay, so we are introduced to Dilip Verde's room, which is a very overstuffed room. Okay, from the description of the room, we understand that this person is a very pretentious person, and as soon as when he sees Inspector Ghote, he's rude and uses demeaning words towards him. And when he sees Axel Swenson, immediately he changes his colors, and he's very polite towards him, and he tries to impress Axel in different ways. Okay, uh, we see that as soon as Inspector Ghote enters the room, he catches Dilip Verde reading some kind of a trashy detective novel. Okay, but he immediately throws that novel and picks up his golf club, and he starts behaving as if he's some kind of a classy European or something. Okay, so he uses insulting language towards Indians, and particularly with Inspector Ghote, and he kind of teases him, saying that, do you understand my English? Should I use Hindi to, make you understand? And Inspector Ghote says that I know English, and you don't have to be more English than the English. Okay, so he means to say that you don't need to impress the English people by demeaning the Indian people, because you yourself are Indian. Okay, uh, after he tries a lot, Inspector Ghote tries a lot to get some kind of answer from Dilip Verde, where he was, when did he see Mr. Perfect. He only could get this information that Dilip Verde hates Mr. Perfect. He calls him his servant when he is a dignified assistant, okay, who has helped with the business of his house. Okay, but he refers to him as a servant. Okay, and immediately in between, suddenly he says that I have to go talk to my wife, so I will not entertain you anymore, and he leaves. And Inspector Ghote is mentally beaten. Okay, he's taken for granted, insulted in front of Axel Swenson by this young man who is probably younger than him. Okay, he's properly bullied. Okay, so he's already bullied by DSP Samant, and now he's bullied by this person who is likely to be a suspect. Okay, in this case, he knows that the murder has been committed. Not the murder, the attack has been committed by one of the people from the family, because there's no other way somebody would have intruded into the house and attacked Mr. Perfect. But he's mentally beaten, partly because he's bullied, but majorly because he's unable to solve the case. The case is not going in any proper direction. While Inspector Ghote is mentally broken and he is just standing there looking at his own feet and lost in his thoughts about the entire unsuccessful day, Axel Swenson breaks the silence by speaking about the residual ego of the high class people after the Britishers left India. So when India became independent, all the zamindars who had lost their lands to poor people, uh, although they had money and they had lost their land and they had lost their original or former glory, the ego was still there. And that's why if somebody questioned them or somebody raised concerns about their authority or tried to replace their authority with with somebody else's authority, they became insecure. Okay, and that is why Dilip Vode behaves in such manner, because he's used to such privilege. If somebody questions his authority, he stops cooperating altogether. So while they're talking about all this and they're talking about uh, Gross's criminal investigation, Inspector Ghote realizes that somebody is eavesdropping on the door. So they play along, they continue the conversation, and smoothly and in a very stealthy manner, Inspector Ghote goes and catches hold of the eavesdropper, and it turns out to be Prem Verde, the younger son of Lala Verde. So we are told that Prem Verde is 17 years old. He's a college student and probably he studies arts and fundamental philosophy. Uh, he is he plays very smart. Okay, he gives very smart answers and uh, tries to talk like an elderly person. But we can guess that he is only acting. He is immature and he's naive, and he hates being called a child, especially by his father, who takes him for granted. Okay, and he obviously prefers Dilip Verde more than Prem, and he can notice that. Why does he do that? Probably because Dilip Verde has taken over his father, and he is a person who is more like his father. He's concerned with wealth and business, and he is rude and condescending just like him. So he has taken his traits from his father, and Prem Verde is somewhat different. Okay, Inspector Ghote realizes that although Prem is not answering the questions, he can make him answer questions. He can break his spirit and make him answer the questions. So he tries to talk tactfully to him, and he tries to play in a friendly manner, and he asks him question, what are you studying, and what is the essay that you're working upon. And slowly and steadily he gets him to answer some questions. So the information that he extracts out of Prem Verde is that Dilip Verde had come to Prem's room at 11:45 on the night of the attack, quarter to 12, and had a certain kind of talk with him for half an hour. But Prem won't say when he uh, accidentally mentions that Dilip had come to his room to talk about something, and Inspector asks him what was the talk that they had. So he just says that some brotherly talk, and that's it. So Inspector asks, like, for half an hour, what kind of brotherly talk? Can you tell me something that he said, some important information? And he becomes nervous suddenly, and he says that, I'm underage and I'll tell my father that you are questioning me, so I'm going. Okay, so immediately Inspector Ghote tries to relax him, and he says that don't worry, don't worry. So he asks him more about what he's studying, about the 4 kinds of beauty that he has been studying in his philosophy class. And he gets another information that Mr. Perfect had gone out for some business. Prem doesn't know what business, out of the house at 8 p.m. So these are the two pieces of information that uh, Inspector is able to derive out of Prem. So he breaks his spirit about what was the talk that happened between Dilip and Prem at 11:45. Prem is about to tell him. The inspector intimidates him that, if you don't tell him, everybody from your family will be accused and everything. So when he's about to he's about to speak something about this matter, Lala Verde enters the room. Lala Verde enters and he accuses Inspector Ghote of insulting his son. And Inspector Ghote, in turn, is very defensive, and he says that he did not mean to insult Prem Verde. He was only questioning him in a very friendly manner. And Lala is confused because he says it's not Prem that I'm talking about Dilip, the one who questioned before him. And then he notices Prem and he says, what are you doing here? Okay, don't you have anything to study? Go and, waste my money. That is what you can do. So he insults Prem too. So he's clearly not fond of his younger son. And he's furious that the inspector has insulted his elder son, Dilip. Okay. Then he moves on to joke around with Axel about his marriage and how he's a lucky person if that he's not married. And he says that when you will marry and when you will have a kid and all those discussions which are not at all fruitful for the investigation. And Inspector Ghote is very angry because of it. Okay, and he fails to answer any of the questions and ultimately denies that there was no attack, and he says that just get rid of yourself of this case, inspector, and go and live with your family. Why are you getting so knee deep into this case? And it is going to cause you problems. Okay, and so this is what happens, and then then the constable comes in and he tells the inspector that the DSP has asked him to meet regarding the theft case at the ministry. And Inspector Ghote uses this as an opportunity to show that he is in charge of such an important case, the important case of theft of 1 rupee at the Ministry of Police Affairs, and he has solved that case. So he's using it as as a leverage to show that he's not just any other police officer. But his plan fails because the constable tells that the theft of 1 rupee is the culprit of the theft is still to be found yet, because the window cleaners are not guilty, because on that particular day there were no window cleaners at the office. So that is where this chapter ends, and inspector and Lala Verde insults the inspector, and he tells that 1 rupee, and even then you are not able to find the culprit. What kind of inspector you are? There the chapter ends. So the DSP has called Inspector Ghote to tell him that he is to find this person called Felix Souza, the peon at the ministry, because he is the one who has stolen the money. And the inspector asks, "How do you know it?" And he says that because he has run off, he has not come to the job, he has run off, and that only means that he is guilty. Okay, so immediately Axel and Inspector Ghote, they run off to the given address. The DSP gives them the address of Felix Souza, and they go on to find him. But Felix Souza is not to be found in the given address. Okay, so Inspector Ghote makes an assumption, and he says that perhaps he is a Goan person, so he might be living in the Goan colony. The place is called Dhobi Talao, and they rush off to Dhobi Talao. Uh, we also see in an instance where Axel is surrounded by the beggars of Bombay, and we are given an account of how little children beg for food and money in Bombay. And Axel is bent on giving them money, or giving them food or whatever. And Inspector Ghote, first of all, he's in a rush and he immediately has to go to Felix Souza's house, because if he gets an information that police has come to search for him, he might escape. So he's in a rush, and Axel is bent on giving these children money and telling them to go to sleep, to go to their beds, go to their parents. And Inspector Ghote is angry, and he tells that these children don't have beds to go to, and stop giving them money because this is not going to help them in any manner. So a dilemma of charity is presented to us, that whether you should give charity, or whether you should donate to children or not, whether it is going to help people at all, giving away money, or you should invest in a charity that is more uh, that solves long term issues. Okay, so Inspector Ghote tells that this is not going to solve anything. So they rush off and they go to Dhobi Talao, and there is a reference of the physical tiredness of Inspector Ghote. His shoulders are aching, uh, his knees are aching. Okay, it feels like he'll faint and he'll fall down. He'll just collapse there, but he still keeps on chasing. He's not had enough sleep or food or any kind of rest. He is mentally stressed, physically stressed. Okay, uh, there's a place where they keep on asking about Felix Souza, and it's a Goanese colony, so everybody is Felix Souza. Okay, so all other people in the colony are named Felix Souza. They are not getting hold of this Souza, who is the peon at the ministry. Okay, uh, so at one point, the inspector is talking to a boy who's scared because he thinks that the police has come to catch him because he has sold off his sister. Okay, or he's going to buy his sister. Okay, so there is a reference of human trafficking. That boy is scared because perhaps his sister has been asked the has been put into this trafficking business before. So that's why he's protective about his sister, and he thinks that the police inspector is somebody who's trying to sell this girl once again. So he's unable to answer anything because he's very protective and he's very scared there. So the inspector is trying to explain to him, comfort him, that he's just asking where is Felix Souza. And just then Axel Svensson just runs off, shouting that he has found a trail to Felix Souza. And before the inspector could tell that, you're not supposed to go alone, let me come with you, Axel Svensson runs off and disappears in the crowd. And the inspector chases after him, and ultimately he lands up in this old looking dilapidated building. Upstairs is Axel Svensson, and he is uh, accosted by these two ruffians who have a blade in their hand, who have a knife in their hand, and they ask Svensson for money, but he doesn't have any money, so they just run off. Okay, and then Inspector Ghote immediately catches up to Axel Svensson, and he asks, "Why did you run off alone?" And he says that I met with Axel's I met with Felix Souza's brother, and he accidentally told me where Felix Souza lived. So immediately I had to go. Otherwise, he would have informed Felix that police is coming to catch you. Okay, so I immediately ran off without waiting for you. And for once, Inspector Ghote was thankful to Axel Svensson that he, used his brains. So immediately they go to the given address, and they find Felix Souza resting there, and they catch hold of him. And Inspector Gote just beats him up and tells him that, you liar, you lied on the day of the investigation. You are the one who stole the money. Where's the money? Where's the money? So he keeps on looking for the money here and there. And this guy Felix Souza, he keeps on crying and telling that I did not steal that 1 rupee note. Please believe me. You can ask Mr. Jain. He was there with his eyes tucked to the door. I never went inside the house. You can, you know, ask him once again if you want to. And Inspector Ghote sees through the logic of it. He thinks that, uh, of course, this person is making sense, that, if Mr. Jain is giving a testimony, he's telling it. He's, very sure that nobody entered the house. How can we prove that Felix Souza entered the house? So this man is denying that he stole any money, and he is also telling that there is a testimony of Mr. Jain that he did not enter the house. So how are people saying that he has stolen it? So he asks the important question to Felix Souza, that if you did not steal the money, why did you run away? And he breaks down and he says that, because they are going to put the blame on me. I know that. I could see that in their eyes, that I was the scapegoat that they were going to use, and I had to run away because of it. So Inspector Gote says that you don't need to worry. If you're not guilty, you will not be put behind bars. Okay, you report to your duty tomorrow morning. That is it. Okay, and he tells him this, and he leaves and asks Axel Svensson to go to his hotel. And he comes home. All he can think about is going and sleeping and resting. His body needs it desperately. So when he comes home, he finds his wife Protima, who is angrily opening the door, and he and finally asks him that, did you finally get the time to come home? That is where this chapter ends. Now, this chapter is all about the fury of a policeman's wife. Okay, this is not just one household, but any other honest officer's house would be like this: a very typical middle class home, lower middle class home. Okay, and a housewife who's worried sick about her husband's safety and his, food, and his, what does he do for entire day? He has not come home for 2 days, and their son is sick. Okay, he misses his father. His son's name is Ved. So this whole chapter is about the domestic relationship of Inspector Ghote. So everything is not good at his home. His work-life balance is shredded to pieces. Okay, he's not achieving anything in his job as well, and here also in his house, the wife is frustrated because he's never there to attend to the house. Okay, financial problems are also discussed. Okay, that the wife wants a refrigerator in the house. She's been asking Inspector Khote to get it time and again, and he also gets angry. At first he so calmly tries to explain to Pratima that, he had to be there at the duty, but when she talks about the refrigerator, he gets very angry, and he says that, uh, your mother did not have a refrigerator, my mother didn't have it, why do you need it? Okay, so he, like a typical Indian husband, started shouting at her, and she started crying. There was a, shouting match happening when their kid was sleeping in the other room, and Protima asks him to hush, and she goes to sleep with the child, and he says that don't talk to me, and she's very angry. Inspector Gote notices that Protima, his wife, is beautiful and so graceful, but it is all beneath the deterioration that middle class life has caused to her. Okay, so her beauty is not showcased properly because she's poor. Okay, and her anger at the moment is worsening it. Okay, so he can see through her beauty, but at this moment he cannot find her beautiful. Finally, when she, sits down beside the child and just melts down, Inspector Gote also melts down, and he politely and sweetly asks his wife to, give up the anger, and finally they reunite. Okay, as soon as they reunite, Protima falls asleep. Okay, but Inspector Gote is haunted by several questions. What are the questions? The questions like, uh, why were only three fingerprints there, okay, on the drawer, okay, uh, how had that rupee note disappeared from the drawer, okay, what was it that young Prem Verde was talking about, the talk that Dilip had with him on that night, okay, uh, what was so what made Dilip Verde so touchy about anything to do with Mr. Perfect? Why was he so angry upon the mention of Mr. Perfect? Okay, why had Lala Verde been so mysterious about the rusty iron gate key that had shut off all the servants? Okay, what was the condition of Mr. Perfect at this point? Would he die? When would he come? When would he gain consciousness? All these questions kept haunting him, and he finally got some sleep, only to be woken up again by a phone call. The phone call by DSP Samant. Okay, the phone call was an angry phone call, and DSP said that, did you not catch hold of Costa? When he said Costa, he meant Felix Souza. So he keeps forgetting the name uh, of the suspect also. So he says, go, and I told you to, catch this Costa and bring him behind bars. So why didn't you do it? So Inspector Koti tries to tell him that he is not guilty, sir, because he has reason uh, with him. He has evidence. Mr. Jain says that he did not enter the cabin. So how can I say that? Uh, how can I arrest him? And he says that, you have to arrest him, because what did you tell him? Did you tell him to report back to his office if he is not guilty? So inspector says, yes, I told him that you have to come back to your job. So DSP says that he has not returned to his job today also. That means he is guilty. Okay. Now I want you to go and catch hold of him and get a confession from him. So he emphasizes the word get. Okay. He says that I don't know anything. I just want a confession, a written confession from him. Even if you have to use, if even if you have to torture him. So he describes a bunch of what do you say, torturing techniques, okay, that you hang him upside down and make him eat plenty of spicy salty food, and then keep the water bottle just a few inches away from his reach. Okay, so he tells him to use these torturing techniques only to get a confession that he had committed the crime. And inspector says that this is not right, this is not honest, and he says that, what, just do whatever I have asked you to do. Okay, and he had to finally agree to it, and he says that, okay, don't worry about it, I'm not going to use torture on him, but if he is guilty, I will get his confession. Okay, so immediately with Axel, Inspector Ghote wakes up early morning and moves and goes to Dhobi Talao once again. There they find Felix Souza witnessing a bull show. Okay, what is the bull show? There's a man who has this decorated bull. Okay, and he there's a crowd that has gathered in a circle, and they are all watching this bull who is named Bholenath. And Bholenath can answer anything, he can prophesize anything, whatever you ask he can answer. Okay, so the people ask him, who is the person who's accompanied Bholenath asks him, Bholenath, tell me who has never told a lie. And Bholenath moves around and goes to this woman holding a baby and nods at the baby, and people just clap, saying that, of course, a baby who's 1 month old cannot speak truth or cannot speak lies. So that's why Bholenath is wise enough to understand that. So Axel Svensson is, of course, so fascinated by it, and he says he thinks that this is a literal evidence and a kind of a fact. If Bholenath agrees to it, that means it's true. Okay, so he brings Felix in front of Bholenath and asks that whether this man has uh, committed a theft or not. And Bholenath nods yes. And Felix Souza, knowing that, he till now he did not break down, but knowing that if the cow has, if the bull has shown them that he is guilty, that means he is caught, and he breaks down there and he confesses that yes, you are right, I have committed a sin, I have committed theft. That is where this chapter ends. For a moment, Inspector Ghote is relieved that Felix has finally confessed to his crime, but in the very next chapter, we see that Felix has confessed to a crime that is not important for this particular case. So Felix says that he has, although he has stolen a lot of little things, odd items from the minister's office, but this 1 rupee note he has not stolen. So he only confessed to being a thief for stealing things, okay, but he has not stolen this particular 1 rupee note, okay. Nevertheless, he is put behind the bars because the DSP had ordered that he is not to be left free. So Inspector Ghote tells a constable to arrest him and put him behind bars. Okay. All the while, Mr. Perfect's health, Inspector Ghote is concerned about Mr. Perfect's health, and when he inquires with the nurse, she tells him that his health has been deteriorating, and that his breath is heavier, and he keeps on mumbling things. So she has noted down one of the things that he keeps mumbling, and that is he keeps mumbling secrecy best. Okay, so that is something again very mysterious, doesn't make sense, you know, but important for later on. All right, so yeah, then he goes back to Prem Verde because there was something that was left incomplete. Prem Verde was going to talk about the talk that Dilip had with him on the night of the attack. Okay, but this time Prem Verde is super defensive and he says that I'm not going to tell you about the talk that I had. It is your duty, Inspector, to ask me and interrogate me. I understand, but it is also my duty to, as a son and as a brother, to not reveal anything that is important. So at this point, everybody knows that this household is hiding something very important, and it is super frustrating for Inspector Ghote because he has to solve the case, but the people are not helping. Okay, so by using his tact and everything, the information that he gets from Prem Verde is that the important information that he gets is that he doesn't want to speak because whatever he speaks can be used against the reputation of the family, because Nina Verde's reputation is at stake, his sister-in-law's reputation, because she was violated before her marriage to her brother. Okay, so if this things comes out in the public, the family's reputation will be ruined. So this is one very important piece of information that Inspector Ghote gets. Okay, but further beyond this, he does not speak much and he just leaves. Then Inspector Ghote meets Lala Verde, and he tells that I'm going to ask your daughter-in-law a few questions. And Lala Verde says, yes, go on and ask that she devil of a woman. Okay, so he's clearly, he clearly hates Nina Verde. He says that, just beware of this woman. She's like a witch. Okay, she'll bewitch you, and she uses those words. And Inspector Ghote is shocked that he's talking such ill things about his own daughter-in-law. Okay, so he goes on and he meets Nina Verde. She is not dressed in a manner you would expect a bahu of such a big household to dress. She is wearing such skimpy clothes and not too branded or not expensive clothes. Okay, but she has certain kind of charm about her. Okay, and not in a good way. So Inspector Ghote feels that Lala Verde's ill things about his daughter-in-law hold some kind of truth, because this girl, this she doesn't speak in direct manner, and she is flirting with Axel Swenson. Okay, almost flirting with him, and not answering in a direct fashion. Okay, so Inspector Ghote realizes it's better to stay away from this woman. Okay, because she can direct the case, the investigation, into a wrong direction, and we will not even know it. Okay, immediately when she goes away, Lakshmi Verde, the wife of Lala Verde, comes in, and she is the exact opposite of this woman. She has this amazing authoritarian, demeanor. Okay, nothing. It seems like nothing in the house can change without her approval, without her consent. Okay, even Lala Verde is scared of her. Okay, and she says that you can ask me questions, whatever I want I can answer, whatever I don't want I won't answer. All right, so they ask her about her whereabouts, And she says that, I was helping the servants with the cooking and everything, and then we had dinner, and then I came back to my room, and there was another maid who can give the testimony for my, presence in my room. The same was spoken by Nina Verde also, that she had a headache, and there was a maid in her room, and she had directed the maid that nobody should enter the room, not even her husband. Okay, so this is the information. Very small, very short interrogation with Nina Verde and Lakshmi Verde. In Lakshmi Verde's, during Lakshmi Verde's interrogation, she mentions Gautam Athale, who is Nina's father. Okay, and she says that, my husband is nothing like Gautam ji, because Gautam ji is old school and his manners are old school. So she's clearly fond of Gautam Athale, and she wishes that, her younger son Prem works at his office so that he can learn a thing or two from Gautam ji. Okay, so now Ghote and Swenson decide that they'll go and visit him. They visit this person. He's a lawyer. He's a very famous lawyer. Gautam ji is a lawyer, and his office is decorative, is elite, but it is nothing like Lala Verde's house. It's not overdone. It is decorated aesthetically and tastefully. Okay, it's not. It does not speak. What you say, attention. It does not seek attention, and even his tone, his demeanor is very polite and cordial. And Inspector Ghote is in awe of this person, because he's answering every question so politely. He is not missing out on any information. He does not have Inspector Ghote does not have to, just try to get one piece of information out of him. He's just giving out information. So he tells him that Gautam Athale tells him that he had visited Lala Verde's house, a very important piece of information. Till now, nobody from Verde's house had spoken that Gautam Athale was present on the night of the attack. So he tells that he was there on the night of the attack, and he had left there at 10 o'clock. Okay, so he was there because Dilip had returned from Delhi. Dilip has been working in the Delhi office of the business, primarily because Lala Verde does not want him to ruin the business in Bombay. So in order to, keep his son happy that he's working also, he let him have an office in Delhi. So he had returned from Delhi, and that's why Gautam had come to meet his son-in-law. Okay, but he said that I was taken aback from the the awkward behavior of Lala Verde and his secretary and all these people. He said that I am a man who would have dinner and who would immediately leave. I don't like to hang around when when I have some job to do or something, just without any reason, to drink and to have fun and to chat. I don't do that. Okay, so after the dinner, I was about to leave when Lala Verde said that, you just come to the drawing room and have a drink with me. So I had to go and I had to have a drink with him. But to my surprise, he did not even stop there to have a drink or a chat with me. The entire time he was whispering something with the Parsi secretary, and then both of them left me alone in that drawing room. And when I couldn't take it anymore, I left at around 10 o'clock. You can take the number of the driver, or you can get in touch with the driver who had taken me at 10 o'clock from Verde's house to my house. Okay, so he gave that information. So till now, Inspector Ghote was very, very calm, and he was happy with this interrogation. He got a new piece of information, a new piece of the jigsaw puzzle. There was only one thing that ticked, one conversation, one question specifically that Ghote asked Mr. Gautam, which ticked him off eventually. So all his facade of whatever, uh, this uh, good behavior and cordial behavior came out, okay, it peeled out just because of one question. And what was that one question? The question was that, uh, did you know Mr. Perfect, the secretary, at the time of your daughter's marriage to Dilip? Okay, a very simple question apparently, but it ticked him off, and he said that if you think my daughter's wedding has to do anything with the attack on Mr. Perfect, then you're wrong, Inspector, and you shouldn't go in that direction. Okay, so he kind of in a threatening voice tells him that you shouldn't go in that direction. Okay, so now after this kind of a threatening tone, uh, he understands, Inspector Ghote understands it's best to leave from here. Okay, and Gautam Athale also tells him about kind of gives him a hint that you are looking in the wrong direction. Perhaps you should ask your superiors and look somewhere else for information. That is what he speaks in the end. Okay, so now again Inspector Ghote goes to Lala and confronts him about this new information, that why didn't you tell me that Gautam Athale was present there? Okay, what was the reason that you hid this information from me? And at first Lala Verde was really angry, and he said, uh, how can you interfere and poke your nose in my domestic business like this? What am I to tell you? Why am I to tell you that there was a guest at my house or whatever? Okay, why should I tell you? But later on, when Inspector pressed him, he told that he was invited because my son had come, and he got angry because his daughter, which and my daughter-in-law Nina, had a premarital affair with the Minister of Police Affairs, okay, Sri Ram Kamath. So he said that is the reason, and because I had business with with him, okay, so I did not tell him that I was dealing with that information, and that's why I had to hide it from him, and that's why he was angry when you mentioned that Mr. if this case has to do anything with him, okay, because he never wants to hear the name of the minister ever again, and that is the reason he quickly married off his daughter to my son. And he says that I did a mistake, I committed a big mistake, because I thought that because of his money and because she is the only daughter, I married him off. But this woman is a she devil, and she has ruined my son's life, and he keeps on talking ill about her. That is where the chapter 14 ends. So after again a very tiring day, the inspector goes home to his wife and his child, again once again late at night, and he finds a note that says, at least don't wake us up. And he has taken an appointment with the Minister of Police Affairs the next day at 9 a.m. So he has to sleep. And as soon as he enters the house, he finds this note, and he finds a sofa. He sits on it, and he kind of collapses into it because of his physical stress. Okay, and he sleeps very soundly. When he wakes up, it's noisy and it's sunny, and he wakes up in panic because he's late already. Okay, he looks for a clock or a watch here and there, and he can't find one because his watch has stopped working. Okay, it's stuck at 3 o'clock in the night when he had come home. Okay, and he immediately calls the when he finds out it's 8:30, he immediately calls the police station and asks a constable to get him to reserve a truck for him, a police van for him, or something like that. And he is told to his relief that Axel Swenson has already booked the truck, and he will be coming and picking him up. While he's waiting for Axel, he tries to talk with his son who is playing in the garden, but he does not talk to his father, and he says that that mother has asked me not to talk to you because you are never there, and you don't like us, you don't love us. Okay, and in a very sorry tone, Inspector Ghote tries to explain to his child that he's a policeman, and he has certain duties, and he has to catch the bad man and put him behind bars so that we can all live in peace happily in the society. So in a very childish manner, he explains what the duties and responsibilities of a police officer is, but we sense that he is very sad that he cannot spend time with his own son. Okay, and Axel Swenson immediately comes and he asks him to hurry, and they all leave. But all the time they are panicking because they are super late for the appointment, and they finally make it. Okay, but when they reach the office, they learn that the minister has already left. They were only 4 minutes late to the office, and the minister has left. Okay, it tells a lot about the minister as well, that Inspector Ghote says that he is a busy man, he must have some meetings or something. But later on, we understand that this was all some kind of a facade. Okay, and he never really wanted to be involved in all this, and talk to the police inspector for the investigation. Okay, so up from there, he goes to Lala Verde's house, and he immediately goes to the room where Mr. Perfect was attacked. And this time, while he's searching thoroughly the room, he finds an old candlestick. Okay, and he sees that there is a blood stain on the candlestick, a very small blood stain on the candlestick, not on the side, not on the broader, wider side, the base of the candlestick, which would have been more probable, because if you hit from the base, it makes more impact. But he finds that it is there on the on the other side of the on the edge of the candlestick. Okay, anyway, he takes that candlestick and carefully he carries it to the forensics department where it is studied by another sergeant. Okay, and they eagerly wait, Axel and Inspector Ghote, they eagerly wait for the results to come in, and this sergeant is super lazy and super. He takes his own sweet time to find out about things, and they are panicking there. They're anxious. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? And finally, after matching with all uh, the suspects, they find out that it is Prem, Prem whose fingerprints are there on the candlestick. So it was Prem, and they are all shocked. So they immediately go to Lalavadi's house, and there is a chase that is described with Prem. Prem is running in the streets of Bombay, and these two people are running behind him, and they finally catch hold of him, and he blurts out the truth, and he says that, no, no, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. I was also trying to find out about who is the culprit, and that's why I took that candlestick and I found it that it is there. I also wanted to find it out. So they are not interested in whether he is saying the truth or not, because they know that Prem wouldn't have killed, wouldn't have tried to kill uh, this Mr. Perfect. But they find this out that if only Prem's fingerprints are there on the candlestick, that means that somebody who actually tried to kill Mr. Perfect had wiped the candlestick, the murder weapon, clean, because that person might know that this is the procedure, that the murder weapon would be studied. Okay, so he was smart enough to wipe off the evidences. Okay, uh, they go back to the office, they start writing the detailed report about whatever has happened till now, and suddenly this thought enters Inspector Ghote's mind about Mr. Perfect, who is fighting for his life there, and he feels like, almost like Axel keeps on thinking about mysterious and mystical elements. He feels that somewhere instinctively, that because it's so hot and it's so sweaty, and they're all craving for the rains in Bombay. So once it starts raining, perhaps Mr. Perfect, will jump back to life. Okay, so his parched lips are looking for Bombay rains once again. So that sweet poetic thought enters his mind, but he's frustrated as anything, and he gets into a minor kind of a frustrating conversation with Axel as well. And Axel tells that, if it was Sweden, till now the suspects would have started talking. Uh, Axel is already become, very Indian in these regards. He keeps asking Inspector Ghote to not involve the minister, because he's a man of, high power, and he can do anything with him. So let's not bother him or whatever. So he knows the merits and demerits of the system pretty well by now. Okay, so now Inspector Ghote thinks about this whole scenario, and suddenly an idea hits his brain, and he has solved the case. Okay, so he immediately goes to Lalavarde's house. It's raining. Suddenly, it starts raining. Axel Svensson is so happy. They all say that finally it's raining, and they go to the house, and nobody's there in the house. And Inspector Ghote says perhaps they're on the roof, because it is the first rain, and everybody ought to be on the roof of the house. So they all go to the roof of the house, and they find out that everybody is there, and Inspector Ghote goes and he arrests Dilip Vorde, and then he tells the entire motive. He explains that this was the motive that caused Dilip Vorde to try to kill Mr. Perfect. Okay, on the night of the attack, he says he finds out from his father. Dilip finds out from his father that his wife had an affair with the minister, from affair with Mr. Ram Kamath. Okay, and he was very furious. Why was he furious? First of all, because it was his ego that was hurt, that his wife had an affair. Okay, and second thing, that his father was still doing business with this Ram Kamath. So Lala Vade was doing some kind of a business deal related to some government property, some land, because Lala Vade was into construction, and this was a minister. Okay, so whole lot of corruption going on. Okay, so he was selling some kind of government land to Lala Verde, and that's why Lala Verde was nobody's, he did not care about any relationships, although he spoke such ill things about his daughter-in-law, but he did not shy away from doing business with the man who was the culprit behind everything. Okay, so Dilip was very, very angry about this whole situation. All right. And on the night of the attack, the minister was invited to, sign the papers, and that was the reason Mr. Perfect went out also at 8 o'clock to get the papers and everything. And because this signing of the deal was to be done on that day, and coincidentally, Gautam Athale is also present, or he has also come to the house to meet his son-in-law. So it is a very tense situation in the house, and Lala asks Mr. Perfect to keep the minister Sri Ram Kamath away from Gautam Athale, because Gautam ji just hates this man because of the history, right? And Lala Wade keeps telling Mr. Perfect that secrecy is best and nobody should know about it, and that's why Gautam ji tells that, Lala Wade was whispering in the ears of, whispering something with Mr. Perfect there. Okay, and the servants were also locked away in the servants' quarter. Okay, because secrecy is best. That is what he kept on repeating, and that's why Mr. Perfect, in his unconscious state, keeps mumbling secrecy best, right? So now, when Mr. Perfect is in one of those darkly lit rooms, he's getting the papers and everything. Dilip enters there, and in that, dark room, he thinks that it is Minister Kamath, and in a fit of rage, what he does is that he picks up the candlestick and he hits him on his head, and then he finds out that it was not Minister Kamath, it was Mr. Perfect, right? And then, to save his son from all this mishap that has happened, a new kind of case was created, so that Inspector Ghote, who was very bent on finding out about the case and what happened on the night, is distracted by this another case, by the theft of 1 rupee note. Okay, because if he found out about the truth, everybody would be affected: Dilip Verde, Lala Verde, and the minister, right? So they all, ganged up to form this plan so that the inspector is taken away from this case, right? So the only honest person who was there was, Axel Swenson, and kind of Gautam ji a little bit, okay, and Inspector Ghote himself, right? So he arrests Dilip Verde in the end, and he tells Axel Swenson, this is the biggest irony of the whole thing, of this perfect murder, that this was the most imperfect murder. Okay, uh, because the man who was attacked was not the intended man. Okay, the man who was intended to be killed was the minister. Okay, so this was the most imperfect murder ever. Okay, and as they are dealing with all this, the good news comes that Mr. Perfect has gained consciousness, and Bombay is blessed with rains, and this rain has come after this frustratingly hot summer. Very symbolic that finally, after this great deal of nuisance and obstruction of justice and whatnot, okay, finally justice has been served, and Inspector Ghote has found out who is the culprit, and now he could sleep peacefully. That is where the novel ends.